Peoples of the worldwide federated internet. What's good? Most people don't have time in their busy day to pay attention to the minute things going on within society, some things that may not matter to them, at least now. And one of those things is tech censorship. I realize that this is not something, let me get a little closer to my mic. I realize that this is not something that most people care about. And I can understand why most people don't care about it, because when looking at it and not really understanding how deep the issue goes, why would it matter to you? If I heard an argument posed this way yesterday, and I think it's actually a, a very sound argument. Now, there might be holes in this argument, and I'm sure I will, might get some comments from people to the contrary, but this was the argument. It was made by a commentator. He said that the tech media censorship is similar to this. Imagine calling someone and having a discussion about a news story you heard, right? Like, let's take Trump taxes, right? Let's say, hey man, did you hear this story about Trump and his taxes? Yo, what I think is boop, and the phone cut off. Because the phone company felt like that was a conversation that shouldn't be heard. Or imagine if you were talking about the Hunter Biden laptop situation and you called a friend and said, yo man, I just read this story about the Hunter Biden laptop, and what they were saying is click, the phone cuts off. Because the phone company felt like that's a conversation you shouldn't be allowed to have. Now, the argument can be made that the phone companies are private companies. This is very true. But how do you communicate with people cross country? Now, you can say, well, you can write them a letter. Come on, we know the reality. The speed of information and the speed at which information travels in this day and age. If I wrote a letter to you, the news could have changed 50 times before it got to you. And that letter might not take 3, maybe 4 days to get to you. And the news cycle changes and information moves so fast and things happen so quick that whatever I told you in that letter, by the time it gets to you, it's not the same. There's more information. So, with that being said, big tech and social media companies are very similar to phone companies in this regard. Conversations that are being had socially are happening across social media. Now, again, just like I could make the argument that the cell phone companies are private companies, and I could say they have a right to cut off your conversation if you're discussing something they don't deem worthy of being spread. I don't think anybody would stand for that. And in that same way, I don't think we should stand for tech media censorship, because this is where the problem comes in. If this is allowed to spread, it will only spread. Right now, Jeff Bezos I was just reading something about this literally like 5 minutes ago, is looking to purchase CNN from what I've read. Now, I haven't confirmed that, so that may not be true. We know how the internet is. But think about that. What happens if Jeff Bezos decides to purchase AT&T or T-Mobile or Verizon? Could he carry those same policies that are spread across social media to the cell phone companies? What if Mark Zuckerberg bought a cell phone company? Or what if Sundar Pichai of Google bought a cell phone company? Could they carry the same idea they have going across social media to cell phone companies and stop your conversation if they feel it's a conversation that shouldn't be held? Now, that might be an oversimplification of the issue. I, however, don't believe it is. And so I know that most don't care about this situation because they don't see how it affects them. You see, the thing about a snowball, and we all have heard of the snowball effect, is at the top of the hill, that snowball is small and you don't care about it. You pay it no mind. But as that snowball rolls down the hill, it gains, it adds, it gains in volume. Next thing you know, it is smashed into your house at the bottom of the hill and knocked out a whole wall. This is how I see tech censorship. And I keep talking about this issue, and this is another one of those issues where I feel like I'm talking into dead space. But this is something that I think if we don't get a handle on, and I'm not necessarily saying I want the government per se to get a handle of this, but in some ways, I'm torn. I mean, I seriously really am torn because, like I said, a cell phone company is a private company. Can a cell phone company, or does the cell phone company legally have any right to cut off your conversation if you're talking or discussing something across their cell phone network that they don't support? That argument could be made. Now, I'm 100% confident a cell phone company would not be allowed to get away with that. There would be legal recourse, and in my opinion, as there should be. You see, again, this is where I part ways with my libertarian brethren. I am a small government guy. I really am. And I do believe the government should get involved only when necessary. Situations like this with these tech companies, I think is one of those only when necessary situations. I honestly believe it is. I think if we let this get out of control, it's going to snowball. Like I said, many of these tech giants are very wealthy dudes. They're in essence controlling the flow of information. Imagine if Jeff Bezos does buy CNN. Now, I watch CNN, not religiously. I tune in. But there's people who exclusively watch CNN. So Jeff Bezos owns a newspaper, and he will own one of the biggest news conglomerates in the United States, arguably in the world. There's some of you that might not like CNN, might hate CNN for whatever it's worth, but that doesn't change the fact that CNN has some power. This is dangerous. I am not against people making money. I'm not against people making as much money as they can. That money should not be allowed to influence the masses toward your personal ideology. Because in essence, that is mental slavery. If I could buy, and again, I'm not opposed to being able to do this, but this is where, like I said, this is where I believe the government actually does need to get involved. If I could buy, let's say Clear Channel, which I believe is one of the biggest entertainment conglomerates in radio, if I'm not mistaken. Might be iHeartRadio now, which I'm not sure if they're owned by Clear Channel. Anyway, let's say I bought one of the biggest radio conglomerates, right? I control most of the radio stations throughout the country. And then I bought CNN. And then I bought a newspaper. And then I bought one of these social media companies. And let's say my ideology leans one way. We all have an ideology. Let's keep it real. And let's say on my news organization and on my radio stations and on my social media platforms, I only allow one line of thought. How long do you think it will be before people are influenced and pushed into that direction? This is the problem with these social media companies just being allowed to run roughshod. I don't have all the answers. I know, like I said, some of my friends who are libertarian, they cringe when they hear me say these things. But one of the problems I have with the libertarian line of thinking sometimes is it almost negates the fallen nature, the sin of man. And I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can negate, and I don't think you can turn a blind eye to the fact that we live in a fallen world. That's just reality. That's what it is. So we can't just let things go and leave people to their own devices. That doesn't work. Right? I would love a society where everyone just goes about their day, doing their own thing with absolute freedom. But we know what would come from absolute freedom: anarchy and eventually tyranny, because people cannot be left to their own devices. There has to be some sort of rules, some sort of regulation, and enforcement of those regulations. Whether you like it or not, this is just the condition of humans. So this tech censorship, you don't pay attention to it now. It might not matter to you now, but when that snowball hits your house, you are going to wish you were paying attention a lot sooner. Believe me when I tell you this. Y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.